I hope you're doing all right. So, as promised, today we'll continue with the test format, IELTS test format, and task number 1. So today we'll cover task number 1. As we have explained before, there are two tasks in IELTS. Task 1 is a task in which you shouldn't spend more than 20 minutes. Pra mos shpenzoni mos harxhoni më shumë se 20 minuta në taskën e parë. And there are a few things that you need to remember when you are doing task 1. So the first is 20 minutes, no more than 20 minutes. After that, remember to answer the question completely. So first, read very carefully what information you have and then answer all the information that you need. If you have something that has to do with sequencing, then use first, second, finally. Pra nëse ka diçka që ka të bëjë me renditje, përdorni e para, e dyta, vazhdimi. Cohesion is very important. So cohesion has to do with the connection of the words in your writing. So let's say, for example, sometimes you'd start with this and then you'd continue with it, he or but or synonyms. So basically a variety of words that will still keep the information together but will give some variety because you don't want your writing to be monotonous. Vocabulary is very important, so you need to know quite a few words. In other videos, I will be explaining a variety of words that are related to IELTS exam. Sentence structure is very important. So it is very good to have complex sentence. However, like I've explained before, if your sentences are complex and they are confusing, they're not good. So you need to have sentences that are clear and not confusing. Let's continue. So example of task 1. Now, as I said, you shouldn't spend more than 20 minutes. Now, if you look at this graph has information that you will need to explain. So you can see that the graph below shows the different modes of transport used to travel to and from work in a European city during 3 different years. So in 1950s, in 1970s, and 1990s. Now, write a report for a university lecture, describe this graph, and remember that you should write at least 150 words. Just like I've explained in the last session, in the last lesson. So when you are writing your task 1, you need to ensure that you have a minimum of 150 words. Let's continue. So what you do is, this sort of exercises could be good if you work with another person, but you can still work alone as well. So the first thing is, when you look into the graph, you try to understand what are the most important things. The most important things are the things that you can see at a glance. As soon as you look at something, these are the things that are very visible. So you have the information that is horizontal, vertical, you have the charts, you have the bar charts, and you have bus, car, bike, foot, and 1950s, 1970s, 1990s, and percentage of total travelers. So this is the information that you understand. Now, it's very important. So the first thing is understand. Second, understand, try to look at the most visible things, so something that is the biggest or the smallest. So all of the, especially the biggest, is always very, very important when there is a drastic change, when there is something very much going up or very much going down. So that is something that you will explain. Another very important thing to look at is if there are clear patterns. So if there are patterns that are clearly defined, like for example, if you look at the bike, you have up and then it keeps going down. The same thing is on foot, it's up and down. Or in car is the opposite, from down to up. So you see that there are changes, there is an increase, a constant increase. Now, anything that seems very surprising, like for example, if you look at the car, usage, you have somewhere around 35%, so it's over 35%, so it could be like 37 or over 36%. When you are not very clear about how much it is, you can just say over 35. So then you would be fine, you would be within the correct range. And then you look into the clear relationship between these. So for example, you look into the bike. How much is the difference from 1950s to 1970s, and how much is from 1970s to 1990s? So you look at this and you understand if you're talking about changes that are similar or very much different changes. So all of these are very important as soon as you see the graph or pie chart or any other task, any other graph that you'd have in task one. So the first thing is identify the main trends. So what is the most visible? Identify what is horizontal, vertical, what are the names, what are you talking about, and if there is any clear or consistent, so if it's going constantly down or constantly up, and if there is any relationship. So like for example in this graph you have cars and you have foot, so as you can see, for example, or car and bike, so car is going up and then bike is going down, so generally these are constant. And if you look into the bus, car, bike, and foot, you will see this, that the bus and car are constantly going up, while the bike and foot are constantly going down. So these are clear relationships. That means a lot of people maybe stopped traveling by bus, and they were stopped traveling by foot, and they started traveling by bus or by car. Let's continue. So when you look into the pie chart, when you look into the graph, it is very important that you focus, as I said, on the major things. So the introduction, the first section of your writing, would have exactly this information. So what is horizontal, what is horizontal, what is vertical, what are the main years, and basically what you see in the first, when you just see the graph. So one way of writing the graph, the explanation about the graph, is that the graph below shows the different modes of transport used to travel to and from work in one European city in 1950s, 1970s, and 1990s. So this sentence comprises all the information that you can see. So what you see horizontal, what you see horizontal, what you see vertical, what you see on the sides, all the information is covered. Let's continue. Now, once we have done this, then we start looking into specific chunks. So we look into the cars first, and then we look into bike, and then we look into bus. So we look into what we think is the most important. So because you use your own words, it does not necessarily have to be exactly like this. Exactly, you don't have to use the same words, but the logic should be the same. So one answer is, the amount of people using cars grew considerably, rising from just over 50. So as you can see here, we're talking about over 50 to just from over 5%. So you're talking about 5% here is over 5% in 1950s to 25%. So this is exactly 25% because it's on the same line, and in 1970s, and then climbing almost 40% in 1990s. All right, so almost, because it hasn't reached 1940s. So this is the explanation just about car. Now, generally, it's up to you to decide what part of the information you'll start first, with which part of the information. As I said, generally the best thing to do is start with the most visible one. So the most visible one is cars, because cars have increased a lot. Let's continue. Now, obviously, you'll have to speak about the others. So you'll say, however, as you can see here, we said that the bikes are constantly decreasing, and so are the foot decreasing. So you explain that the amount of people using bikes decreased over 25%. So here it was over 25% in 1950s. Of commuters cycled in 1950s, but this had fallen to less than 10% in by 1990s. So as you can see, in 40 years, The fall is drastic. Similarly, the amount of people who walked has fallen a lot. All right, let's continue. Now we focus in the last one, which is not really similar to the others because the others have equal trends. Or cars were constantly increasing and bike and foot is constantly decreasing, while as you can see the bus is fluctuation. There is fluctuation, so it's sometimes first is up and then it's down. So then we have a specific information, specific part in the chart where we explain that the amount of people using buses initially rose, here we have a rise, to almost 30%. So we can say about or almost, it doesn't matter, it's the same thing, to about 30, and then it to almost 30%, and then it dropped to about 17% by 1990s. So this would explain that we are not only referring to the three first pie chart graphs that we explained, but we're talking about the last bar graph as well. So this was the explanation of task number 1. Next time I will meet you with a recording with a lesson on task number 2. Take good care of yourselves and stay safe.